this really happened to me when I was 17. I don't remember why, but I decided to go for a drive with my dog named Oreo. We had a cage in the back for him to sit in because he had a bad habit of sitting on the driver's lap. He is a 70-pound pit bull. I was driving near Lake Michigan, coming from South Haven, Michigan, at about 4 p.m. when Oreo started to go absolutely nuts in the back. There were two other things that made my blood run cold at this point. First, Oreo never, ever made a noise. I had heard bark once or twice in the 6 years I had owned him. He rarely ever moaned, groaned, whimpered, or whined. He was a very relaxed dog that, until that point, didn't seem to know what aggression was. But at this moment, he was ferociously barking, snarling, and I assume biting the cage from the rattling sounds I heard behind me. The second thing that terrified me was that I felt like someone was sitting in the passenger seat of the car staring at me, even though I left my house with only me and Oreo in the car. I shifted my gaze to the right because for some reason, I felt that if I made eye contact with the thing next to me, or if I stopped the car, I would lose control of the car and crash. Also, we were on a straight stretch of road that took like 5 minutes to drive down before I hit the next intersection. I would also like to add that I feel that I am a decently brave person. I never was afraid of the dark, grew up in the woods, watched horror movies, went to haunted corn mazes, broke into abandoned houses with my friends, and so on. I also think that I am a person that doesn't easy cry, let alone sob. But in that car, I began to frantically cry and shake uncontrollably. I then started to beg that it leave us alone. Next, I started screaming that I won't look so you can't touch us. All the while Oreo was still panicking. I keep saying that line over and over, and this went on for about 3 minutes because I was going almost 95 miles per hour in a 55 miles per hour zone. At the first intersection I passed since this started, I saw my brother sitting at the intersection. He was returning from work and had a bright orange pickup truck, waiting for oncoming traffic, me, to turn. At this point, he was the first car I saw. I blared my horn as I passed him and he sped after me. We had about 10 more miles of country road and no one was on it. He eventually got in front of me and hit his brakes, making us both stop. At this point Oreo calmed down and I felt that I wasn't being stared at. My brother ran to the car screaming at me, and was about to tear me out of the car and beat my ass. He thought I was being a stupid teenager and just messing around. He also said he went 110 miles per hour to catch me, when he saw how badly I was crying. He helped me out of the car, but I was still unable to talk. He then almost dropped me and screamed, "Holy shit, what happened to Oreo?" I turned my head for the first time and saw that Oreo had blood gushing from his mouth. It later turned out that he lost 2 of his front bottom teeth and had serious cut on his jowls. The cage was also bent inward in multiple places, suggesting that Oreo was pulling on the cage with his mouth in an attempt to free himself. This single event caused me to seek out therapy for a year. I was also tested for bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and various other neurodegenerative disorders, but I was found to be in perfect health. I took this event very seriously and truly considered my mental health because, when it happened, I was such a danger on the road and was afraid it would be a reoccurring event. But it never happened again and I actually don't believe it was all in my head due to Oreo's behavior. What do you all think? Has anyone experienced this before? The girl at the pond. When I was younger I used to live in an old house with my family, though my mum will only be relevant in this story. In the middle of a small farmer community. Our house was far enough away that we weren't really bothered by anyone except by the rare jogger here and there. Now where we lived always had an odd feel to it, as in it never really felt as if you were in any area alone, though at this age, around 8 to 10, I usually didn't stay too long at home as we lived in a large property area with a large potato patch, a swamp area along with much others. There was always something to do, though one area stuck out to me whenever I explored. It was located just past the potato patch was a large pond right beside a swamp-like area. I frequently visited that pond up until the day of my final visit. Night. It was a crisp night as I woke up feeling quite thirsty, so I had walked to the kitchen, which had a window seeing over the whole back area from our house, and she caught my eye, a young girl in what appeared to be a white gown standing over the pond, just standing there staring, and before I knew it, as if it was a dream, I was now standing in the middle of the field, water still and had looking around. The night was perfectly visible and staring at the pond once again. She was still there, though this time staring at me almost into my soul. Then I saw it. Oh God, I can never forget that face, that awful face. It was the thing of nightmares and yet so alluring. I found myself getting closer even after realizing this. I just kept Going, I couldn't stop myself from walking, and it was like a spell. I couldn't scream, I couldn't stop, I was under her control. I kept walking until I reached the bed of the pond, looking, and I could not see a bottom. What happened next was somewhat of a blur. All I remember next was feeling a hard shove, and along with the feeling of being restrained, and then it was just nothing. I had awoken to the crack of dawn, to my mother running over to me screaming my name. I was soaking wet and had red marks on my arms, though I didn't know what to tell her. I didn't know if I could. Shortly after that we had moved houses, and I am now happily for the most part living in a nice place in a large town far away from that place. I was reading a book and my doorknob started shaking aggressively, and the door opened. Standing outside my door, looking into my eyes, was this thing. It was as tall as my doorway. It kept shutting and opening my door. For some reason I got up, and it slammed my door shut. I opened it and it was gone. My mother denied ever hearing my door slamming. To this day, I refuse to walk around the house at night. It's eerie, you feel unwelcomed. I always feel watched, am always paranoid in this house, scared to turn around a corner and see this tall as figure standing before me. I'm 5 feet 3 inches, so it overpowers me by a lot. Just recently, maybe a month ago, you know how people always say never to have your foot hanging over your bed. Well, I now take that literally. Something breathed on my foot. It was hot breath. It took me a second to realize this, and it freaked me out. I didn't sleep that night at all. My sister slept downstairs at the time. She claimed that every night, it would walk around the basement outside her room, move stuff around. She even said she woke up to someone holding her hand. We both won't go downstairs. Downstairs is its territory. It has calmed down now, but it comes around every so often to give me a good scare. It moved on from my sister to torment me, and it scares me shitless. TL, Doctor, I am drunk and posting a lot of creepy shiz from my childhood. It might be too long. I probably ramble a lot. It's also creepy AF. Hey guys, I guess I'm a little drunk and for some reason I feel like posting creepy stuff from my childhood. I hope this is the place to do it. So I grew up in a really small town among some deep hills in the US. Our neighbors had cows and horses when I was growing up, but as time passed the area grew up. It became a pain in the butt traffic-wise. The house I grew up in was not terribly old. It was in a neighborhood. We lived in a circle of houses with a large park in the middle. However, in that area are many small family cemeteries. They date back hundreds of years, we suppose, but you can't read the stones anymore. One of them is right by an apartment complex a half-mile by crossing yards from my old house. I'm not sure when I first started noticing it. I remember being very scared of the dark. I started sleepwalking at age 2. That didn't stop until I moved out of the house. My parents would find me all over the place, all asleep, in the morning. Once I was upside down on a chair. Then one day my doorknob started turning at night and I became terrified of all the dolls in my room. I started sleeping with the light on in the hall. And then I started sleeping with my light on all night because I could not rest in the dark. My grandma's house was a comforting place. Maybe the only comforting place. As I grew older, I felt like something was in the corner of my closet. When I was alone in the house, the garage door would raise and shut by itself. It was not motorized. I slept downstairs to escape it, but then I started hearing something walking upstairs and downstairs inhumanly fast. Also, sounded like something was being dragged around the couch. At my dad's house, things were strange, too. I kept seeing a white ball out of the corner of my eye. I thought it was a cat. One night, I was feeling strange. I was staying in a guest room. The TV was on. I was watching the sci-fi channel showing of an old anime. Something about robots and ballet dancers. Robot Carnival? Perhaps. And then I flipped it to blame it on Rio, with Gene Wilder. And the footsteps in the hall started. I thought it must have been my dad. I got closer to the TV. Suddenly, it sounded like bowling balls were being dropped in the hallway. I was shocked. I ran out of the room. Nothing. Not a soul. Nobody but me was awake. I finally fell asleep that night around 4 a.m. I couldn't tell anyone what happened. It was too weird. The night after that, I fell asleep again to the TV. Same room. And got woken up by scratching sounds behind my bed in the wall. I never came back to that house after that. I was old enough at the time and I just elected to see my dad every once and again. I guess one last thing is that sometimes I have weird dreams. I don't even know how else to say it. But I want to tell somebody these things. Two dreams I've had that have impacted me. The first when I was around puberty. In my mom's house. The house with the doorknob that turned and the devil in my closet. I dreamed I sat up in my body. It was nighttime, even in my dream. It was weird and static and I looked at my doorway. Nothing was there. And suddenly this voice reached me from the inside of my head and said, "You are the conduit." And it kept repeating that. I don't know what it meant. I woke up for real after that, very confused. I didn't even know where I was. My mom found me screaming and crying in my closet. The next dream I had involved a boy. When I was a younger woman, I dated big dumb men with big dumb drug habits, and some of them sold big dumb drugs. Out in the country. In places where you'd never look. Deep in the hollows. Hollers. There are some bad fucking people out there. I met this guy. And we had the same birthday. It was at a party. It was like we were meant to be. He was a bad dude and his mom said we were spiritually bound. How did she even know that crap? One day, before the dream, he went to a bonfire. It was at a place I'd never been. We were at different schools and didn't see each other much. Suddenly, even though I was hours away, I had to find him. And through the woods I did find him. He said he had been wishing I was there. That night, I had the second dream that really affected me. We were in his mom's house. Asleep. And then I start dreaming about my grandma's house. Suddenly, I'm in the house as I remember it from when I was about 6 years old or so. I'm in the TV room and suddenly I start drifting through this hallway. There are about 1,000 doors. I take one on the left and suddenly feathers woke me up. It was like I was being rubbed with feathers. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. But I was awake. Now, check this crap out. Dude that has my same birthday, his grandma calls as soon as I'm awake and says she had a dream something was coming through dream time to hurt me and hurt him. I can't even make this shit up. Right? It's crazy. Fast forward, I'm married. Boring yucking stay-at-home mom. Love my husband. Not the bad dude. Have 2 kids. I'm lucky. I am grateful for my boring life. But something weird is in me and I dunno, will it come back? I'm almost 40. I haven't seen anything in over 15 years. Or heard, for that matter.